Oh, Mako, the music doesn't play. You might need to keep your.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Merly Barlan. I'm the International Vice President and Director of the WFWPI's Office for UN Relations in New York. My warmest welcome to you all, and thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome to the 2022 session of the United Nations High-Level Political Forum, HLPF, virtual side event on the theme Building Back Better for the Coronavirus Disease, COVID-19, while advancing the full implementation of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Our working event title is Permaculture, a universal, hopeful practice for building back better. This side event is organized by the Women's Federation for World Peace International, co-sponsored by the International Association of Applied Psychology and World Council of Psychotherapy. Women's Federation for World Peace International is an international peace organization in general consultative status with the UN ECOSOC. WFWPI was co-founded by Dr. Hak Jahan Moon and her late husband, Dr. Sun Myung Moon, in 1992. The three areas of our focus for the UN office relations in New York are bridging divides, raising peace-loving global leaders, and women in the environment. COVID-19 had exposed the fragility of our well-being and our food systems. As a way of ensuring a sustainable, inclusive, and resilient recovery from the pandemic, WFWPI highlights permaculture as a practice to build back better, ensuring well-being, food security, promoting ecosystem restoration, and building partnerships between the local government and the civil society to achieve SDG number 2, zero hunger, number 4, quality education, number 13, climate action, number 14, life on land, and number 17, partnership for the goals, among many of the inextricably linked goals, by inspiring and awakening a sense of shared responsibility among the stakeholders. The HLPF has become more than just a review of countries' actions towards climate change and the SDGs. It has become a universal mechanism of accountability and progress towards the 2030 Agenda. We hope to inspire both government and civil society, local and global leaders to identify practical solutions and successful practices and encourage replication in your respective communities. This includes growing one's own food, creating a community food forest, showcasing permaculture as a universal, hopeful, regenerative model to achieve food security and the health and well-being of the planet. Climate action and biodiversity adaptation initiatives are therefore at the center of our projects for the coming years because it is intrinsically linked to our work for a sustainable world. To this end, we are actively working on expanding our development of the Giving for Good International as a signature Women's Federation project, authored by our very own Senior Vice President, Dr. Sanjin Moon, to fund more of our sustainable projects worldwide. Although launched just last year, we were able to make great strides in our commitment to empowering women and restoring the environment. We were able to sponsor 12 environmental projects around the world, from Africa, where nearly 400 families are now able to light up their homes with solar lamps, to Brazil, where clean drinking water was made accessible to 200 families along the Amazon River. Your impact has been indispensable. Permaculture literacy and training program is another environmental project of Women's Federation for World Peace. It has a holistic approach, community-centered, nature-based, transformative education program. Since we launched this project, one of the most important learning for me is that understanding that our planet is at breaking point, soil building is fundamentally as critical as peace building. The permaculture project in Bohol, Philippines envisioned to establish income-generating food forest managed collaboratively by young people and their families. Through our literacy and training program, we provide holistic, experiential education, long-term investment, economic and social support with shared goals towards regenerative environmental stewardship, interdependence of people, planet, and mutual prosperity. The principles and ethics of permaculture translate creative, critical, caring, and collaborative thinking into real actions that will tangibly improve the future of the people and their communities and our planet. Majority of the HLPF discussions on SDGs progress and achieving peace report point to a dismal trajectory. It is pointing us in the wrong direction. In finding the link between achieving the SDGs and world peace, a holistic, balanced approach in human development and empowerment is necessary. The role of women, her maternal, feminine leadership approach, her multitasking, managerial skills, sociability, and compassion are powerful qualities that can save the world. The driving force behind Women's Federation's relentless efforts to serve and solve the world's problem is a longing heart of a mother, sister, a daughter, and longing to end the suffering of their families and humanity and create an environment for a beautiful and peaceful world. Without investing in healing of our hearts, true empowerment and sustainable development will be an impossible goal to achieve. I'd like to borrow some of the words from the founder, Dr. Hak Jahan Moon, as she boldly declares that the hope for humanity comes from mothers. And she said, and I quote, "The world of peace is not initially accomplished on the global or even national level. Peace must first be realized in the individual and the family because these form the basis for all human organizations and systems. Core issues of world peace essentially depend on the question of how peace can be attained within the individual and the family. Women's Federation aims to bring awareness to personal responsibility of the climate crisis and actionize implementation of planetary healing from our home. Permaculture practice paves a way for people's hearts and nature to reconnect and complete each other." To this end, I'd like to share with you a video of our thriving permaculture project in Bohol, Philippines, managed by our young leaders.
Good day everyone! I am Christine Rose Bolayo, the co-project coordinator for the Permaculture Literacy Program here in the Philippines. So as you can see, I am surrounded by this very beautiful nature because we are here at the project location in Muntisunting, Carmen, Bohol, Philippines. Issues that we are concerned about is the destructive farming practices here in the Philippines. So farmers became too reliant on synthetic chemical pesticide and inorganic fertilizers, which we know leads to planet damage. So also we noticed that young people do not show interest on backyard gardening and farming. So in consonance with the third goal of COP26 on adaptation, we envision Permaculture Literacy Program as an active climate adaptation initiative that aims for food security, health and well-being of the family, and the regenerative healing of planet through practice of permaculture, as well as to mobilize critical mass of young people and families to advocate for holistic well-being of people and ecosystem restoration, and to raise 40 peace-loving environmental stewards and permaculture teachers. So today, we are happy to show to you the results of the collective efforts of people who took part in this project. As to the progress of the project, we have completed the set of officers of the 10K Heroes United, a youth implementing arm of WFWP Bohol, which was established in 2016 to trailblaze on permaculture literacy program. Also, we are now 90% in completing the permaculture training hub. We are now at our nearly finished permaculture training hub, which house the 40 permaculture lecturers and practitioners. But due to the super typhoon that hardly hit the province, it somehow slowed down the construction. Nonetheless, we will continue the construction with its time frame, and we are having this goal to finish this year. We also conducted series of consultation meetings with the permaculture experts on the province. And the most successful and inspiring aspect of the project would be the heartfelt testimonies of our participants.
I'm Patrick Mumor. I'm from Tubigon, Bohol, Philippines. Because of their permaculture literacy program, I learned to work with nature, not against nature. And also, it helped me change my perspective to turn problems into an opportunity and to see the world not as a world full of problems, but a world full of opportunities.
My name is John Paul Corduba. I live in Tagbilaran City, Bohol, Philippines. The GFG project through this permaculture literacy training program has benefited me so much in a way that it has drawn me closer to nature by understanding how it works, how can we connect and coexist with it, and how can we value it so that we can preserve, protect, and allow it to flourish even more to its fullest forms.
I am Dale and I came from the island province of Bohol, Philippines. I think this project is really beneficial and it really helped me to envision the social impact that this initiative is trying to generate. And in that, I was able to somehow truly understand the real and the deep nature of the problems of our community is facing. For example, our constant flooding during after torrential rains, and our scarcity of water during summer, our malnutrition problems of the children, and also our poverty. And with that, I would like to thank the WFWP and Giving for Good for this opportunity. And I truly believe that in this generation, we the young people are the victims of these harsh realities. And thus, we are taking ownership and we are standing firm to really help our own community in combating these environmental issues. And with that, I am asking each one of you to continue supporting us, supporting our advocacies, and support other young people who are dreaming for a peaceful, happy, and prosperous world.
Here we continue to establish our implementation system. So this remaining months of 2022, we will continue raising up 40 participants who will become the province's newest permaculture lecturers and practitioners. So we have the 6 months education and training on permaculture and internship of participants under the permaculture mentors. So out from this, we envision to produce 12 permaculture lecturers, and this 12 lecturers shall educate 12 families in their communities. So the goal is to make a permaculture home-based garden/farm, and we are also hopeful that we can institutionalize and include permaculture to the offered courses in the technical education and sales development, or called TESDA, here in the Philippines. And also we would like to partner with our local government unit. So this year is an exciting year for all of us. It is because we will leave no stone unturned to get this project rolling. So we have now the land, the permaculture training hub, the mentors, the passionate young people crusading for permaculture. So there is so much momentum and hope for this project to take off. So I would like to quote what our beloved founders, Reverend Sun Myung Moon and Dr. Hak Jahan Moon, said: "Those who think for the solutions of the problems of the world are destined to become leaders." And we will try our best to become those leaders, and we will continue to dream big dreams that others dare not imagine. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Women's Federation for World Peace International UN Office, and Mr. and Mrs. Takinaka.
Thank you very much. Wow, that was really beautiful, really hopeful video. Thank you, Christine. Now, I have the great honor to call our first speaker, who will be speaking. Well, actually, I'm sorry. We are going to we receive a welcome address from the permanent mission of Cameroon to the United Nations. Oh, sorry. Mako, could you please play? Mako?
Distinguished delegates, esteemed panelists, it is an honor to participate in this side event entitled Permaculture, a universal, hopeful practice for building back better. Indeed, Cameroon is fully aligned with this very crucial thematic, and I would like to welcome the initiative from the Women's Federation for World Peace International. In this vein, we commend the well-established commitment of Julia Moon and that of Dr. Sun Jin Moon to achieving the SDGs while implementing projects with noticeable social impact. Ladies and gentlemen, having achieved such an unprecedented development in the field of science, technology, and data management, while actually experiencing and enjoying such a huge accumulation of capital and resources, how can we afford to be indolent, indifferent, with the world moving backwards on eliminating hunger and malnutrition? Thanks to initiatives like this side event, the condition of those deprived, those far away from minimal human dignity, can no longer fall on deaf ears. Altogether, we should agree the misery and poverty we are facing, as well as the inequality we are dealing with, are not fatality. Hopefully, the permaculture, as we understand the concept, is not only aim at eliminating hunger and malnutrition, but additionally at combining furthermore sustainable consumption, the conservation of biodiversity, as well as the protection of the ecosystem. Therefore, we expect from this meeting outcomes with strong and action-oriented commitment, since it is time to act. It is time to act for the greatest benefit of the most needy: children, young people, women, and men left behind, especially those left further behind. I thank you. Je vous remercie. Abungam. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mezang Akamba, the first counselor from the Cameroon Permanent Mission of the Cameroon to the United Nations, for your meaningful, important opening remarks. Now, I have the great honor to call our first speaker who will speak on the perspectives of civil society. I'd like to introduce Dr. Sanjin Moon, the Senior Vice President of WFWPI and the Chairperson of the Pacific Rim Education Foundation in Kailua, Kona, Hawaii since 2012. Dr. Moon received a baccalaureate degree in psychology from Harvard University, where she served as class marshal and was inducted into the Alpha Sigma Lambda National Honor Society. She was awarded an honorary doctorate from Sun Moon University. She is currently studying for a master's in clinical and counseling psychology in education at Columbia University. In 2020, she founded the Giving for Good project with WFWP to raise awareness and funds for humanitarian activities supporting the UN SDGs. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Dr. Sanjin Moon.
Thank you, Merle. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you're zooming in from. We are deeply honored to welcome our esteemed sponsors, distinguished guests, an amazing panel of eminent speakers today for the United Nations High-Level Political Forum 2022 under the theme, Building Back Better from the Coronavirus Disease, while advancing the full implementation of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. The working title of today's side event is Permaculture, a universal, hopeful practice for building back better. In the past couple of years, COVID-19 has exposed the fragility of our well-being and our food systems around the world. And as a way of ensuring a sustainable, inclusive, and resilient recovery from the pandemic, this event will highlight permaculture, a system of guiding principles and ethics for sustainable food production and land management, as a practice to build back better, ensuring the well-being of people and the planet. Now we're trying to build a hopeful path forward. So I will begin with kind of the past to kind of ground us where we are today. And I start with the UN history because it shows us a track record of a hopeful path forward to rebuild back better from the world's most tragic events. The UN's historic predecessors had the visionary and seemingly insurmountable mission to end the global horrors and suffering from World War I with the formation of the League of Nations. The League of Nations, sadly, was not able to secure peace, which led to its transformation into the United Nations as we know it now. In 1945, after 51 nations gathered with firm resolve to find solutions for peace and security of the globe, following the atrocities of World War II. And now, more than ever, when the peace and security of the globe are threatened again, after over 75 years of transformational global service, aid, advocacy, policymaking, and proactive change, the UN's mission to save the state of the world today is being tested in one of the largest battles to save our planet from an existential threat to humanity, and that is climate change. The UN has been at the forefront of the climate crisis with its UN Framework Convention on Climate Change and formal meetings of the Conference of the Parties since the 1990s. This historic landmark 2015 Paris Agreement, an international treaty of 196 parties to deal with the effects of climate change by setting the goal to globally reach net zero emissions to offset global warming, is still leading the world today. This agreement has united the world in a gallant feat with its global life-saving commitment and the implementation of national policy, accountability, legally binding requirements, and a system of transparency in monitoring, reporting, and verifying the duties of each party. Another groundbreaking agreement relevant to climate change is embedded in the UN General Assembly Agenda for Sustainable Development Goals, a set of 17 goals that include a goal about climate action, which outlines specific targets for the climate goal, which the member states of the UN agreed to achieve by the year 2030. Undoubtedly, the UN is at the helm of globally uniting and tackling this existential battle and has provided an understanding of the extensive science behind the climate crisis and is continuing to educate the world to accept its collective responsibility to all come together to tackle the largest threat to all life on Earth. The science, in quotes, is unequivocal. Human-caused global warming is impacting nature and people's lives everywhere, as reported by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. The IPCC's sixth assessment report also finds that there is a hopeful path forward which can reverse the devastating impacts of this existential threat by sustainable changes in human activity focused on reaching the UN climate. As of now, however, our inaction has the climate crisis demolishing our Earth by toppling historic record-breaking charts with superstorms, floods, fires, droughts, and extreme weather events, which are devastating our lands and coastal communities. We are no doubt confronting an existential crisis, given the sea level rise, deforestation, threats to agriculture, natural resources, infrastructure, the release of pollution and hazardous materials continues on, maladaptation, growing urbanization, population growth change, and the threat and destruction or extinction of multiple species of life and ecosystems. These extreme climate events can lead to large-scale displacement, migration, and humanitarian and ecological aid crises. The quality of life and access to basic needs such as nutritious foods, clean water, well-being and health, shelter and education, and opportunity for the 3.3 to 3.6 billion vulnerable and poor peoples and nations will be pushed to the limit as our global population will increase to 9.8 billion by 2050. This interconnected web of life, peace, and security, which the founding nations of the UN boldly and heroically sought to ensure, is at a global tipping point. With the planetary threat of climate change for all life on Earth, the larger threats to economies and financial systems, ill-equipped to handle the surge in basic survival needs, coupled with the endemic battle of COVID-19 pandemics and new viruses on the horizon, we are in an existential crisis on multiple fronts. So how is the globe going to pave a hopeful path forward? It may seem that we have greater problems and issues to tackle in our immediate nations. However, we all are interconnected and interdependent on this earth. And that is what unites us all here today. Our collective solution is to work together in solidarity and commitment to the UN SDGs and the global climate policy and actions. All of us here today are here for a greater, more hopeful future for all. We are here with the hope standing on the foundation of the UN's historical record of 75 years of global work united for peace. As committed NGOs, CSOs, individuals, communities, activists, leaders, teachers, scientists, healers, and educators, we come together in this UN HLPF in our collective mission to protect and preserve the balance and health of our planet and its people for future generations to come. As all climate scientists agree, it is human activity that is creating the climate crisis. And thus, it must be our global resolve to stand together with the United Nations mission to sustainably and holistically pave the path forward, redirecting human activity in the direction of mutual peace, prosperity, and the security for all life on this planet. Women's Federation for World Peace is taking a serious stand on the issue of climate crisis and has integrated environmental programs with climate adaptation initiatives in 11 countries. These projects partner with civil society organizations and local government agencies and are creating a wave of women empowering climate adaptation initiatives, influencing young minds and helping shape local policies towards mindfulness and earth healing lifestyles. One such project I founded under the tutelage of my Columbia professors, Dr. Jack McGordy's Venture for All curriculum and Dr. Judy Kuryansky's inspirational class, Psychology at the UN, was a social venture project implementing climate action called Giving for Good International. GFGI utilizes the resale of circular fashion to lessen the practice of the average American throwing away 81 pounds of clothes a year. And 10.5 million tons of clothing in America is thrown away yearly. If you add up the waste worldwide, that adds up to 26 billion pounds of clothing that goes into landfills. The startling information I learned was that the apparel industry remains the second largest industrial polluter, second only to oil. And this inspired GFGI. Through the sales of previously loved clothing, GFGI has generated over $250,000 US internationally for humanitarian and ecological aid and is providing hope and a sense of climate agency by making impactful change for good all over the globe. One recipient of GFGI's $10,000 charitable grant went to the building of a school for permaculture in the Philippines. And you will hear from the educator and founder, Ms. Yani Dutta of the Regenerous Project here today on how there is hope for the future of the planet. You will also hear from Director Michaela Glatzel, who has spearheaded sustainable changes in her country with the hope of governments playing a vital part in a healthier, happier, sustainable future. And our final esteemed guest speaker, the representative are our co-sponsoring NGOs at the UN, Columbia University Teachers College professor, journalist, clinical psychologist, author, and award-winning internationally renowned multimedia broadcaster. And my inspiration, Dr. Judy Kuryansky, will share her heroic path of leadership, advocacy, and change-making that helped SDG 3 about health and well-being for all to include mental health and well-being. Mental health and well-being have been widely recognized as a serious health issue triggered by the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as pervasive chronic anxiety and distress due to existential threat events around the world. She will be enlightening us on how we can build back better by taking care of our well-being, each other, and the earth, as she holistically links us all on this peacekeeping journey and highlights the roadmap to bring about sustainable global change for all. It is the collective work of good hearts, visionary minds, and the united resolve of individuals, educators, NGOs, and all people on the globe that partner and support the UN mission that is a substantial, hopeful path forward for us all. No matter how big or small the contributions, we know we can save each other and the planet because we have witnessed it. And we are continued to forge ahead in solidarity with the UN and fellow partners to do more for the greater good and bring peace to the world. I thank you all for your participation, and I look forward to each speaker's vital contributions to this forum. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sanjin Moon, for your deeply insightful and hopeful message. Next, we are going to call our next speaker, Ms. Yani Dota, to address the topic of permaculture practitioners' perspective. I'd like to introduce Ms. Dota. She is an architect, entrepreneur, permaculture designer, and founder of the Regenesis Project, a movement that aspires to lead large-scale efforts to heal and regenerate degraded ecosystems in the Philippines. She has worked at the Built Environment Research and Innovation Institute in the Building Construction Authority in Singapore, where she led the development of industry standards, frameworks, and training programs. She is currently formulating a framework for regenerative development model through the Regenerative Project. Ladies and gentlemen, let us welcome Yani Dota.
Thank you so much for the wonderful introduction, Miss Merly, and good evening to everyone. Okay, so I'm going to start off my talk by sharing one lesser known but surprising fact about my permaculture journey and my dream of creating the Regenesis Project, which is also the first ecosystem restoration camp in the Philippines. And that is from the time of inception, or basically from the time the seed was planted in my heart to the time when it was officially launched, it took me 10 whole years. But this isn't even the surprising fact, because if you look at this timeline, you will see that the actual time from the development of the framework to actual implementation is only 2 years. So that means that it took me longer upfront. And what was happening was basically paralysis, action paralysis. Paralysis by the fact that our global problems are much too big and much too complex for anyone, let alone an individual, to solve. And there was a point in one point of my life that I felt that there's nothing I could do, even though that my heart was called to do something about it. And that is a very crippling feeling. But I guess as I went about my permaculture journey, and also maybe through natural life lessons, one important thing that I've learned is that life will always find a way. Life will always find a way, no matter what will happen. And I'm sharing this photo of this principle in action. This is actually one of our bamboo seedlings. It's called Dendrocalamus sinicus. It's the largest bamboo in the world. And if you will notice, there are stems that are bent, severely bent, but then there are also stems that are shooting straight up, and those are bigger. Those stems that were bent because we have just been hit by a Category 5 typhoon 6 months ago. It was the strongest typhoon and the biggest calamity that we have ever experienced in living history. But if you will notice, the shoots that came after that event were bigger and much more vigorous. And that just gave me so much hope of how nature actually works. And that is the fact that life will always find a way. So the beautiful thing about this principle is that life is always universal. The principles of nature is always universal, but most importantly, the principles of how nature flourishes is always universal. It has always existed before humans came in. It will exist after our lifetime. It exists. It is universal no matter where we are located in the world, no matter what ecosystem, no matter what biome, no matter what scale, what scale in nature, it is always the same. Principles of nature are always the same, and the principles of how nature and life flourishes will always be the same. And this is why permaculture gives so much hope, because that is exactly what permaculture is. It's learning how to see, it's learning how to design as nature, how to think as nature, and how to feel as nature, so that the life that we create, the environment that we create, our existence will be in alignment with natural principles. So I feel that all the problems that we see, and sometimes we do have the tendency to see only the problems, what I see instead are incredible opportunities for healing that is already happening all over the world, and healing that could happen. So where I'm from, what we could expect in the Philippines is a lot of drought, a lot of flooding, more catastrophic events that will only be exacerbated by climate change. And although we know that climate change is exacerbating all of these events that we will come to expect, which will also affect our own food security, we also know that presently we already have thousands of hectares of degraded and unproductive landscapes, not only in the Philippines, but all around the world. So what I see instead is an incredible opportunity to bring those landscapes back to life, and in so doing, repair not only natural cycles, but also human systems as well. So what if, instead of focusing only on the problem, we use degraded land, we use the problem and turn them into incredible opportunity to bring land back to life, to bring hydrological cycles back to life. And that is exactly what we're doing through the Regenesis project. We're focusing on broad-scale ecosystem restoration, where the goal is to heal and restore broken water cycles everywhere. In some cases, this could be seen as almost like earth surgery. Sometimes there are certain forms of earthworks and interventions, regenerative interventions that you could do that will catalyze a systemic change throughout the landscape. And from then on, nature will start to take over through working with her. And because the health of the water cycle is tightly integrated or tightly linked to the health of soils, then we can also start to see our soil health coming back to life. And with that, we can start to see native species and local biodiversity coming back to life, which is what we're already starting to see. Even in as little as 1 or 2 years, just the smallest intervention, you could already start to see nature making its own way. And then because of that, soil land productivity will also come back. So these are photos of our campers, our volunteers who are implementing our food forest designs that we have allocated in our area. So the fact of the matter is that it's not just us, it's not just our team that is actually doing the restoration work. It's such a shame to just limit the learning and the opportunity to grow and experience the full human experience to just ourselves. But the important thing is to include all of our local communities. So people who have come and helped us, it's not just our teams, it's not just locals, it's not just people from our island, but it's also tourists, local tourists, foreign tourists. And what we're doing is that we are almost creating a new form of tourism that may not even be there yet. Because what we know of tourism is that you go to a different place to enjoy it. You go to a different place and maybe enjoy its local nature and local resources. But in this case, we are actually using tourism and working with local and foreign tourists to bring local nature back to life. And this is what we hope to trailblaze, truly regenerative tourism. So now, from this broad picture of large-scale regeneration, let's zoom in a little bit more and see what could possibly be happening at the home level, at the home scale. So imagine a kind of home that rises above the ashes of calamities, of typhoons, of pandemics, a home that is designed not just to cater to whoever is living inside it, but to all forms of life in its surroundings. A home that is designed according to the true principles of nature. So in this model permaculture home that me and my husband and my parents are working on, we are implementing the highest spectrum of sustainable, not just sustainable, but truly regenerative design. We are doing extensive water calculations and energy studies and even carbon accounting to see just how much of a positive impact we can actually achieve even at the home scale. And the surprising thing is, this home isn't even finished yet, but we're already producing food. Every day, we cook food that is harvested from the garden that is already thriving and growing, despite the fact that our home is not even finished yet. So imagine living in this kind of abundance. Imagine living in a kind of daily livelihood, in a kind of home that is truly, truly aligned with how nature works, because we are finally understanding the principles of nature and then learning from how she flourishes. And then because of this, because of the impacts that you're starting to see and witness for yourself and your household, imagine that all around you, similar projects start to crop up as well. Your neighbors start to implement it. Local schools will start to implement it. Local farms will start to implement it because they could see the difference. They could see the difference in not just the product, not just the soil, but your overall way of life. And imagine that that is the kind of impact that you're able to create because of you, because of what you have done, even if it's just within your home. So moving a little bit closer and zooming in a little bit, let's have a look at who are the kind of people who would live in this kind of home and in this kind of community. So imagine the kind of people who have finally learned what it truly means to become real stewards of the environment. People who learn how to read landscapes, a very critical skill that our indigenous ancestors and indigenous groups know, and a very critical skill that we have somehow lost. But if we can regain this skill again, if we learn how to read landscapes, read nature, listen to her, listen to exactly what she needs, listen to how we can work with her to create something abundant together, then I think that that is an incredibly important and critical skill that every single one of us can stand to gain. And imagine gaining critical skills of not only how to survive, not only how to grow your own food or become more self-sufficient, but also skills that will help you learn how to thrive in a very, very changing and uncertain world. So what we hope to do is no longer trying to fight something. It's no longer trying to resist something. We are trying to flourish despite everything, despite what people might say, despite what we see in the media, despite what we might see in the news. We are choosing to see positive, only the positive through positive action. So imagine that these are the kind of people who not only have new sorts of skill sets, regenerative skill sets, but they are also the kind of people who live their lives in joyful service, who live for the sake of others, who live for the sake of nature, who live for the greater good. Even people who are transforming their respective professions and industries to take care of the greater whole first, before profit, before selfish needs. And even people who were once broken, who are becoming whole again because of a newfound life of meaning and purpose to this kind of way of life. And just like the previous project that we have shared, just like this home that we have shared, these people are real. These are my family. These are our students, our youth, our local communities, our partners, our friends, our leaders. There are light workers all around me. There are light workers all around us. And I think that our time has come. Most of the time, people look towards our global leaders for answers and for solutions. But sometimes the most powerful person in the world that is actually capable of affecting the change that we want to see is actually ourselves. So there is something that can be done no matter what the scale, no matter how big the problem, no matter how bleak our current reality. And the wonderful thing is that we don't have to see it as escaping something or fighting against something, fighting against the current system, but we could instead look at it as a beautiful process, co-creating an alternative existence together, an alternative future together, one in which all of life flourishes. So I'd like to end my talk by sharing with you a video explaining what the Regenesis Project does. So this video it's in a way our wish to the universe, but also our promise to the world of what we hope to achieve within our lifetime. So we hope you enjoy.
Ay 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 ugayam galayaman ugayam galayaman.
What is nature? Nature was the Garden of Eden. a place of perfect harmony and abundance. But in man's pursuit of progress, we have also destroyed. Should we still stay our current course? Or should we carve a new path? This is the story of our return to Eden. We are writing a new chapter for humanity, where we learn to tap into the ancient wisdom and knowledge to live in perfect harmony and balance with all living things. And what will it take? What would it look like if we finally find our place in nature's perfect design? We could grow food in a way that increases fertility of the land, not deplete it. We could create livelihoods that replenish the earth, regenerating land and people. We could create settlements that make landscapes better than it was before. We could travel and create beautiful experiences in a way that leave a positive impact. And we can transform education to touch minds and hearts and create a legion of changemakers, leaders, and restorers with the wisdom and knowledge to enact change and healing. And we could do this place by place, region by region, healing nature through people, healing people through nature. And more than restoring land, we will restore our connection to land, our connection to each other, our connection to self. So that in this journey towards healing the earth, we find healing for ourselves. We call for a different kind of revolution, not of anger or fear, but of hope and love. We are no longer fighting the old. We are already building the new.
Wow, thank you very much, Yanni, for that powerful video, your presentation, turning problems into solutions, healing people through nature, healing nature through people. That is really powerful. Thank you so much. Before we go to our next speaker, I would like to kindly remind our next speakers to keep check on your time, so that we can have more time for our roundtable discussion. And we have a few questions from the participants who would like to answer those if we have time. Thank you. For our next speaker, we have Director Michaela Glatzel. She will address the perspectives of government and civil society partnership. I would like to introduce Mrs. Glatzel. She's the advisor for the Austrian Women's Farmers Working Group in the Austrian Chamber of Agriculture. Director Glatzel is a lecturer at the College of Agricultural and Environmental Education. As the advisor for the AWFWG, she represents 130,000 women in agriculture and forestry. Since 1972, AWFWG offers strategic orientation, organizes and implements events and educational projects, promotes networking of women's organizations in Austria at the international level, They represent the farmer women in various federal advisory councils for women farmers in Austria. Ladies and gentlemen, let us welcome Michaela Glatzel.
Hello, here is speaking Michaela Glatzel from Austria. I will present, is it perfect? So, I have to do the, so is it perfect for you? So, welcome, good afternoon here from Vienna. Today I'm talking about 3 points, green care, a social innovation for the rural area, which is worth living in. The first point, I want to figure out the challenges and what is green care. The second, I will show you 2 examples. And the third point, I want to figure out how the government and the federal ministry build measures towards farmer to make measures. So now I want to invite you for an experiment. Please lean back on your seat, close your eyes, and imagine you are lying on a meadow. Take a deep breath on a meadow surrounded by the Austrian Alps. You hear the bees and the birds. You feel the wind on their skin. And you can taste the self-made elderberry syrup of the female farmer beside you. Now you have a special therapy with animals like goats and alpacas on the farm. You go over there in the barn and there are the animals. And afterwards, you have a therapy in the seminar room of this farm with the psychotherapists, and you can talk about your emotional burdens. Welcome on one of our 100 and more green care farms. So please open your eyes, and on the next slide, you will see hopefully something. So the challenges in Austria for the society on the left-hand side is what Dr. Moon said. We have a lot of stress and depression and loses a lot of working days. We have a lot of people who are overweight. We have a lot of people with special educational needs. And in the next 30, 40 years, our people over 65 years will increase, and also the dementia will increase. These are the challenges of the society. On the other hand side, you have the agriculture and forestry business in Austria, and we have the same problems as all over the world, like rural migration, especially the women will go, the number of farmers declines, the price gap, the problem of finding a successor, the globalization, the climate change. And now we have made and fund a new project, a little localization. Where is Austria? You know it all. It's in the middle of the heart from Austria, from Europe. And our agriculture is very small, structured in an average farm has 20 hectares. It is very biological. 20% of all our farms are run organically. And the most exciting point is that 31% of our 155,000 farms are run and led by women. And another 15%, so nearly 50%, are led by women in Austria. The farms are led by women. So the Austrian Working Group is founded in 1972. We have a lot of projects, like you see, we empower women. We look after the life quality on the farms for the human beings. When the farmers has problems, they can take their mobile and ring us. And we also have educational trainings for female farmers to make good working groups with the society. So they make cooking courses and so on. So our vision is to network with female farmers all over the world in the next years. What is green care? One of our projects where people flourish. It fits perfect to Yanni. We want to build bridges between the agriculture and forestry and the social challenges. So we have active farms, and these can be places for work, they can be places for education, they can be places for health, and also for the elderly people, a place to live. So it's a diversification, not only for tourism, for example, holiday on farms or direct marketing, where we produce high quality products. It can also be a social service like green care, where we are, the social agencies and institutions are always also diversifying and modeling and have new portfolios. So the farmers and the social agencies could be cooperated and make new things like in the educational system, we are helping children and young adults. What is agriculture and forestry in Austria? They learn where the food is coming. In the health and care system, with nursing and care and resident facilities for elderly people, and also helping disabled people in the economic system where they get work on our farms. So the first point, I told you what is green care is. Second, I want to figure out two examples. On the left-hand side, you see Bettina Haas. She is a farmer and trained kindergarten teacher. In the beginning, she had 40 children on her farm, and she created for the region, for the rural region, 6 jobs. Below you can read about what the people say about the project. And on the right-hand side, perhaps you have imagined it in your meditation at the beginning of this speech. The Pointnerhof. Renate Pointner is a qualified nurse, and she wants that she work at home. And so she runs the farm and have the alpacas. The elderly people come to her on the farm and are inside or outside at the animals. So we can ground the people with these kind of farms. And so it's a win-win situation for all. You know the existing agriculture and forestry structures, and they are active and they can be also exist in the future. And we engage for social competencies. We create new jobs as well as traineeships. We boost the local economy. We maintain the cultural landscape in Austria, and also the increase of regional and social quality of life for all, for the farmers and also for the people who comes on their farm. So there are a lot of synergies for agriculture, business, health, and education. This is only a slide. You see the competence all over the federal state of Austria. It's from the ministry till to the employees. We targeted 3 targets, the 3, the 8, and the 15th of the SDGs, and also since today the 70s, where we want to connect and have partnership in the network. On the right-hand side, you see the targets of Green Care Austria, but for me, it's I want to explain how the rural development, it's the second pillar of the European Union common politic, how we make measures in the government. So the project was funded in the year 2011, and therefore we made educational trainings for the farmers to put up their project, and also for the advisors that they can help them through the process. And afterwards, in the last years, we started with a cooperation, the Association Green Care Austria, where we can get 100% of eligible costs in a measure called cooperation. And on the other side, the farmers, can have the funded measure diversification towards non-agriculture activities, which means if you have an idea, you will go to the federal state in Austria. In every region, in every state of Austria, there is a non-full employee, but an employee who knows green care, who can lead you through the process to bring up your innovation, and you can and he help or she help you to get measures, to get funds for your innovational idea for the rural areas. So you see, we have for education, we have educational training, we have measures for the cooperation, and we have measures for the farmers where they can build up their own business on the farms. So in summary, I want to say that more than 100 farms are certified with green care. We want that the people stay in the rural areas, and we want to offer our premium products for the rural areas on active farms. So it's a very high level of flexibility and for a good future for all of us. Our managing director is Nicole Bropp, and she will all know about Green Care Austria. And I have told you yet what is green care and about something about the Austrian agriculture. I show you two examples on our farms. And on the last slides, I've shown you how women and men can show their vision and be a part of the Association Green Care Austria. So thank you for your attention. And at last, I want to say the female farmers in Austria stand for a better living in the rural areas. Together, male and female, society and agriculture and forestry, nature and human being. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Michaela, for sharing with us practical solutions and successful practices, concrete actions in terms of translating government policies into community programs that actually empowers the community. This is something that other governments in other countries can emulate. Thank you so much. For our next speaker, we have Dr. Judy Koryansky. She will address from the academic, medical, psychological perspective. I'd like to introduce Dr. Koryansky. She is an internationally known clinical psychologist and professor at Columbia University Teachers College, a United Nations NGO representative for the International Association of Applied Psychology and World Council for Psychotherapy for 19 years. She partnered with the Ambassador of Palau for the historic inclusion of mental health and well-being in the UN Agenda 2030 for Sustainable Development, and is a policy advisor to Ambassador Y of Sierra Leone to the US. Her many books address women, disaster, relationships, and eco-psychology. Ladies and gentlemen, let us welcome Dr. Judy Koryansky.
Thank you so much. What a phenomenal presentations we have heard already from the Philippines and from Austria and from Dr. Moon. Bless you for being in my class. I'm so thrilled to have watched you grow this Giving for Good, brilliant project of sustainability through fashion, circular fashion. Everything that has been presented is exceptionally exciting about the people and the planet, which is at the heart of the UN agenda. So what I want to share with you is my perspective and an overview of what is going on at the United Nations. Since Merle said I have been there for 19 years now, in talking about the development of the sustainability development goals and the UN agenda and universal health coverage and the preservation of all the 5 Ps, the people, the planet, the peace, and partnership, which is so important. And we could add permaculture that we're dealing with now. I love the 2 messages that we have heard in terms of psychological inspiration, so much meaningful to me as a psychologist, in terms of hope and the fact that we can flourish. And so I want to, in that context, talk about building back better food security and mental health, which is so important in the context of the UN 2030 agenda for sustainable development, as you see here. So the pandemic that we have been through so tragically and we are still recovering from has created tremendous trauma that you all know about, and is very related to food insecurity in terms of access and affordability. This is all connected to mental health. We often don't think about SDG 2, which is ending hunger, but it is so important. And as you see here, the pictures of people with how important food is to our life, our generation, there is a silver lining to this tragic COVID-19 pandemic that is related to food systems that we are talking about, has created a rare opportunity for transforming food systems that we've heard that Yanni has so brilliantly spoken about, and Michaela. It's raised our awareness about food and food insecurity and the need for education that has also been talked about just before, and including schools and besides in the field. And multi-stakeholder projects are important. That's programs that getting the governments involved. We heard from Cameroon, and Yanni was involving the government of the Philippines, and Michaela with Austria. We must have policy, governments, and programs together, moving together with academia and civil society and people growing, in fact, their own food, which is so important, that I will also be talking about. So the idea is here an ecosystem of food that you see here that is like a psychologist, Yuri Bronfenbrenner. So in the core is, as a psychologist, the person. We've heard about that. Yanni discussed that. And then there are these concentric circles that go out. We start with the person, and there is their relationships and the family and the society and the community, and eventually our whole world, and we are all interconnected. I see the sustainability agenda that was mentioned earlier as a nexus model. What does that mean? It means that everything is interconnected that you see in the graph there. So all the 17 goals are connected to one another. And in terms on the right, the design that I had made for this discussion is that I see that health, that Michaela even mentioned, number 3, is in the middle, good health and well-being, including that target 3.4 about mental health and well-being, that Merle mentioned that I was very instrumental in with Ambassador Otto getting into the agenda, and food systems all being interconnected with all the other goals: ending poverty, education, life on land, life under sea, sustainable cities, economic development that we just saw, gender equality, that WFWPI is so keen about, and peace, which they are also so keen about, and climate change. So this is an ecosystem. Everything is interconnected, and education is so key. That is SDG 4 there. You saw the pictures of the young children and the elderly people and the younger people all out there creating a new home environment. One of the projects, and when we talk about examples that I have done with another of my students at Columbia Teachers College during the pandemic, was a project about the people and the planet using permaculture. By the way, since we just heard about it in the Philippines, there is a big permaculture group in Costa Rica, which is a tremendous biodiverse country. And so permaculture, people and the planet, and academia came together in our project that we did during the COVID-19 by having a day-long conference that brought together people doing things like Yanni was describing in planting, having a sustainable home. You see some of the pictures there, all in the context of conversations for change, that we must change. You see some of the speakers who were there. The idea is that we transform eco-stress or eco-anxiety, the existential anxiety you heard earlier, into hope and behavior change, which is part of this. Ongoing with education, which is always key in that context. We must have education to perpetuate this. This project that I just described to you came out of my student Shelby Park's idea when she walked first into class to say, I am inspired by a South Korean program about food waste. We must not waste food. And the project that South Korea had initiated through their government was putting out bins that you see there, and people had to weigh the food that they were throwing out and then pay for the amount of weight of the wasted food. And that is one way to create behavior change, which is necessary from a psychological and sociological point of view. Many of these projects I put in the book, you see there, Eco-Psychology, which is a mixture of environmental protection and psychological principles that we know. So out of this, let's take a look now at the video that Shelby produced and how to eliminate.
On a global scale, humanity throws out approximately 1/3 of all the food that is grown. Producing food that goes uneaten wastes a variety of resources, including land, soil, water, and energy. And if food goes to the landfill and rots, it produces methane, a greenhouse gas even more potent than carbon dioxide. So how do we shrink this food waste mountain? You can start with these 5 tips. 1. Compost. Composting is a great way to reuse food scraps and turn waste into energy for the plants. 2. Store food correctly. Many people aren't sure how to store products. This can lead to premature ripening and eventually rotten fruits and vegetables. For example, potatoes, tomatoes, and garlic should always be kept at room temperature. 3. Don't be a perfectionist. Looking through a bed of oranges until you find the most perfect looking one contributes to food waste. The consumer demand for flawless looking fruits and vegetables has led to many grocery stores to buy only picture perfect produce. 4. Blend it. All the stems, ends, and peels of produce may not be appetizing, but by adding them to a smoothie or soup is a great way to reap their many nutrients. And finally, 5. Get educated. The best way to live more sustainably is to get educated. You can begin by taking a course with us at ecoversity.org.
Okay, so thank you to Shelby for that. Another one of the projects that we are doing now is a partnership emerging between the Lori Teachich Center for Food Education and Policy, run by a very good friend of mine, a fellow teacher and professor at Teachers College, where we're doing a wellness program with a database of food and nutrition and physical and mental health programs serving New York and preschool children, run by nonprofits and hospitals and government agencies. And hopefully in the next few days, as a matter of fact, meeting with the United Arab Emirates, which I'm so excited about because I work so much with them with the World Government Summit and the SDGs in Action campaign, where I am for the former co-chair of the Global Council on Health, with the Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum Global Initiatives. That is Sheikh Mo, we call him, is the ruler of Dubai, His Highness. And so they have a 20 years of hope, which is part of this theme here, with foundation programs related to food, nutrition, and policy. So here is the idea of a program bringing together government and academia in order to facilitate the issues of sustainable food and in the context of education. So another important development on the international stage is that the UAE, by the way, signed an MOU, an agreement with the World Economic Forum, a very important consortium, to create a global platform for food innovation hubs. This is very critical because this whole movement that we've heard about in Austria and in the Philippines, and even, as I said, in Costa Rica, is growing. And in Hawaii, by the way, Dr. Moon, you know that because you're doing that. And this is to really focus on the fact that this is a universal international movement. You see in the middle there a picture of what the UAE has in mind in terms of building this, this innovation hub, and the agreement that they did there, and the UAE aiming to become a hub for innovation-driven food security, which is so important. So recommendations that I have, just to put this up front, is that we need to reduce food waste. We need climate action that has been mentioned so much by Dr. Moon earlier. Programs indicating education and counseling and agripreneurship, a new phrase, and personal initiative that is going on in trainings in Uganda, as a matter of fact. Advocating for policy and laws to address agriculture, and rebuilding trust in government and NGOs and neighbors, which is such an important issue, this concept of trust. And using technology, the topic of my new book, in terms of resilient health systems in the coming recovery period for COVID-19, bridging the digital divide that we have to have. Just quickly, some other major points that are important in the context of international issues. There are countries who are recognizing SDG 2 about nutrition, and SDG 15 and the target 3.4 about healing in the rights to nature, which is very important. The Constitution of Ecuador, recognizing nature as an entity with legal rights, just like we have as people. And the phrase being bon vivre, good living. There is a global alliance for the rights of nature that other countries have signed on to, Australia, US, UK, India, New Zealand. Harmony with nature is part of what happens at the United Nations. And in my past book that I showed you about ecopsychology, I've written about the Pachamama Alliance, the Andean goddess of nature for the Achuar people. We've heard about indigenous rights and healing through these indigenous practices. Climate anxiety, existential anxiety, we heard before, is so pervasive. As you see here, the change in America, such a high sense of what is going on, that we will we have an earth. I am so keen at the United Nations and so passionate about the fact that the tragedy is coming of climate refugees, that countries are sinking like the Marshall Islands. Where will people go for a home? This is critical that we must take a look at. When you look at marches in New York, for example, just down my street here in Manhattan, don't be fossil fools. Ask a dodo bird, extinction is forever, and there's no planet B that we have to recognize. The Security Council meeting just last year during the pandemic had a meeting about peace and security, which so much really of your WPI is dealing with peace. And so the governments are paying attention to that. I mentioned about entrepreneurship, training, and the importance of taking personal initiative that is going on in the STEP program in Africa. One concept that's very related also is One Health, which brings together healthy people, healthy environments, and healthy animals for sustainability. Another example is the Every Woman, Every Child project that was going on under the previous Secretary General that my singing partner and I, Russell Daisy, have done a song about called Every Woman, Every Child, and the importance of nutrition to prevent early deaths of children, of babies and moms. This is an excellent time for mental health and well-being. As you see here, the Secretary General, the Director General of WHO, the Deputy Secretary General, the President of the General Assembly has his presidency of hope. Many countries who are in favor of support of mental health and well-being, Mexico being one of them, being very, very high, and moving the Security Council in terms of resolutions on mental health, which is critical. And women, this is so important for WFWPI, that women have been noticed as So important at the United Nations. The Secretary General promised 50-50 parity for women. The PGA promised he'll only go to meetings where half of the people are female panelists. Sweden calls themselves a feminist government. We have to pay attention about this because COVID-19 has raised the shadow pandemic of violence against women. Attention to youth has been important at the UN. Mothers groups in Africa and farming, considering that women are so important in farming and need to have land rights. And disabled persons are suffering the most from hunger that we need to pay attention to. So my advice for building back better is that we need to have resilience, follow our dreams that we heard of before. There are many techniques about being happy and smiling. Everybody could smile right now at one another. You'll see it is impossible when you smile not to smile back. Dr. Moon has a beautiful smile. I love that. Taking care of yourself in nature, walking in nature, the silver lining of enjoying your life. And here, my final point, you've heard some of these psychological issues: love, togetherness, belief that things will get better, and hope. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Dr. Judy. You are a powerhouse of wisdom and positivity. Thank you so much. Here in this very room, we have the power team to lead us to achieving the SDGs by 2030. This is really exciting. Kudos to your extraordinary contributions. Listening to all of you gave a super boost of knowledge and confidence. During this last hour, we have covered important topics such as promoting model of regenerative land management to achieve food security, health and well-being of people and the planet, awakening a sense of shared responsibility and personal accountability, as well as government NGO programs that support resilience, doable and replicable in the communities. And thank you. I would like to thank every single one of the brilliant panelists, and really, truly a wellspring of hope and knowledge. Thank you. Thank you so much. Actually, yeah, we are running out of time. We are supposed to have a roundtable discussion, but I didn't want to cut your presentations because they're very important. Each sentence, each word contains nuggets of information that everyone can use. And so I don't know, I wanted to extend for 10 more minutes. I hope we can do that. If people can stay around. I think if we can ask, there are quite a few questions in the chat box, but maybe I'll throw around just one question and for everyone. One speaker can answer, and then you can ask questions, follow-up questions to each other. Okay, I think I'd like to ask the question first. Okay, here's the question. How do we get scientists and big cooperations that are sometimes money or economic oriented, other than people's health and well-being on board? Anyone can take it on?
Well, I would say that you knock on doors, that you think of who are the potential friendly people, both in civil society and governments, as you had Cameroon here, and that you have no fear in saying, this is what we want for the world. Are you in alignment with that? I think you are, because we read such and such that you wrote, and let's have a meeting. Be bold.
Wow, thank you, Dr. Kuryansky. Anyone?
Yes, in Austria we have, or in the European Union, in the next few years, in the next 5 years, we will build up a new dimension, which is called AKIS. There we're building bridges from the research to the farmers and the advisory system, so we can take also something from the practical trainers, from the farms to the scientists, and from the scientists to the farm, because often there is like a wall between, and so we want to build bridges, and the European supports this.
Thank you, Michaela. Yanni?
Yeah, one thing that I want to highlight with regards to the Regenesis project, which people are actually quite surprised about, we are actually not an NGO, we are a corporation. And this move was intentional at the very beginning. We could be an NGO and then do research, write grants to ask for funding to fund our restoration projects, but we will also miss out on the opportunity to create, no matter how small, an alternative form of economy that moves towards regenerative industries that will fund this restoration work. So we wanted to envision an alternative future where instead of having like the status quo business as usual and then so-called earth restorers, maybe there will be a new group that will be one and the same, an alternative economy that restores and regenerates earth while also creating an economy for locals. And the science part is that there a quick one on the science part, there is a science aspect to it. We're also working with local universities to get relevant ecological benchmarks on the specific indicators that we want to see on ecosystem health over time.
Thank you, Yanni. Dr. Moon?
Yes, I agree with everybody on the panel. Like Dr. Kransky says, if you care, you need to dare, and that you need the research and you need the practical science and the backing and the functioning programs for things to work in the finances and economy, like Yanni was saying. But most of all, it's the passion to start and care and make that first step into educating yourself or getting education or researching, and then really making networks and reaching out, because the UN is all about partnerships. And that is the way for change to really be.
Thank you. Well, this has been a really enriching discussion. We would love to go on, keep talking, and I think the more we talk, the more we get ideas. But we are in the mercy of time. For those of you who submitted questions, we will answer that we actually have them all written, and so we will ask our speakers offline to answer these questions, and if you put in your email address, we can email it back to you. Yes. Okay, thank you so much. It was such a really good discussion. We are going to ask Dr. or Mrs. Carolyn Hanshin to wrap up our program. Let me introduce Mrs. Hanshin. She is the president of the NGO Committee on the Status of Women at the United Nations in Geneva. She is also the vice president of Women's Federation for World Peace International, overseeing program development throughout the 22 national chapters in Europe. Mrs. Hanshin guides the leadership and advocacy training of young women and men in the WFWP UN internship program in Geneva and remains active as the co-founder and program director of the GIIA Model UN Interreligious Youth Council program. Mrs. Hanshin, you have the floor.
Thank you. It really has been an amazing hour and a half, in fact. I found myself sighing. I feel when I'm sitting in the Human Rights Council, I forget to breathe. But here, so many really inspiring messages came out, and also practices, really, practices that can be multiplied, I think, in many, many ways. I think this is meant to be a call to action for all of us. It's an issue, the environment, saving the planet, making our home more protected and beautiful and healed. It's something each and every one of us can relate to and has a responsibility for. Some of us are maybe more dedicated already in this field, like the speakers today and Merle and your team. Some of us maybe are more emerging advocates of these issues, but I think with every panel like this, or even, articles that we read, we become more and more not convinced that it's necessary, but that there is something I can do actually to contribute to this, and especially by joining forces, and also I think joining forces among women. There is this, as Dr. Kuryansky mentioned, there is this kind of trend toward oneness. This is so exciting. Instead of dissemination and separation, this trend, in many, many organizations and many campaigns and programs. So also what I found exciting about this panel is that, we work especially with Human Rights Council and the institutions in Geneva at the United Nations, but this panel today, we're not just talking about what we are doing for women, but it is really, in this panel, it is what women leaders are doing for the world. And I think this is where we are at our best, where we really shine. Yeah, there is a remarkable phenomena of, as we saw with Yanni, as even we saw actually with all the speakers really, but this identifying a problem locally and then reaching out to like-minded people in your community and then finding solutions together. And then, so it's really a bottom-up effort, then reporting this to policymakers who then should act upon these successes. But as we all come from different spheres, I think in a panel like this, we really can meet as peers, that we can really learn from each other really on some kind of equal footing. Dr. Kuryansky, as these are closing kind of wrap-up words, maybe I could just say a word about each one. It was a pleasure to listen to you and also to have heard about you from Dr. Moon over now some year or more. And not only in your words that you are giving context, but how you are actually giving value to what is being done by others in particular. And this is quite a remarkable, it should be a universal attribute, I think, of educators, but it is not always. Dr. Moon, who I know very well, who has, of course, worked with our Women's Federation, and I could see how this issue of all these issues related to environment, healing the planet, saving the planet, we had sporadic kind of programs or projects around the globe, but really through your leadership, this has become really a signature program of the Women's Federation. And this investing in good practices and invigorating healthy competition for environmental advocacy and environmental programs. This is so, it's just so exciting, I think, for everyone. Yanni, also from the Philippines, you must be really a hero in your hometown as a voice to young leaders through your passion, through your success in what you're doing. And this, clearly you're letting the young leaders develop themselves. You're giving them space, you're supporting them and opportunities to really bring these solutions, which is the best form of education, of course. And Ms. Glaxel Michaela, also your voice for women who are so deserving of empowerment. I have someone in Switzerland who is doing something similar to you, whom we invited to speak at one of our events. And I think it was such a breath of fresh air for us to hear about this sphere of women in agriculture and farming, and really to see the added value that women bring to this field, which is definitely not known, but absolutely needed by all of us. We need agriculture. Maybe before closing, I just would have to say a word about the NGO Committee on the Status of Women in Geneva, an international network of the largest, most prominent women's organizations, all with consultative relations at the UN. We have our we have a task force on climate change and health. We organized we had a consultation day at Commission on the Status of Women 66 just a few months ago, where we promoted this new human right to clean, safe, sustainable environment. And we had, the special rapporteur on that right who spoke. And we could feel, we took time to really collect resources on the environment. Actually, we were not at all experts in this area, but through the process of collecting all these resources, the Aarhus, Aarhus Convention and things that the UNECE or even the UN in Vienna, New York, different things, even national kind of conventions and efforts that have been made about the environment and engaging civil society. We all learned so much, and we made a package that we sent out, and we kind of promoted, and then we sent out to be used in local communities. I mean, especially young women, but of course not only, where they could have they could learn a common language so that they could communicate more easily with their governments, all these conventions and resolutions, so they really could come and make themselves peer, actually, to their governments in their passion and concern for healing and improving the environment. So just to say, I myself feel like I am coming from an emerging advocate to becoming somewhat more expert on these issues. And it has not been so difficult because it is an issue that is so important and pervasive and needs all of our environment, all of our support. And maybe just final word. Let's not forget, because I think on this screen, we have not only just experts. I recognize some and many I don't recognize, but don't forget that this is a panel that has been approved by the high-level political forum, an international intergovernmental body, which is providing us this platform, this floor, to be able to speak to them. I don't know if we have any governments on the call, but I think from what we have learned today, we all have some good talking points to be able to go and to speak to our local, national, UN, counterparts to really promote their engagement on these issues. So again, I say thank you. It's been so inspiring. Thank you, UN office in New York, Merle, Mako and Grace, and all your team also from Australia. Thank you so much. And back to you, Merle.
Thank you, Carolyn, for summing up everything perfectly. In that perspective of bringing all our hard works, the efforts that we are doing in respective communities and our work, and bringing it to the UN level. Thank you for representing us at the UN NGO, CSW, and being a human rights champion. Thank you so much. And also, in addition to Carolyn's closing statement, this program is being live streamed on YouTube, and we actually have mayors and councilors and educators joining us, and they are watching, and this will be rewatched over and over. And I believe that what we have discussed today and all the presenters, they are a work of heart and a work that can command change. And I am so grateful. Thank you to all the speakers, Dr. Kuryansky, Dr. Sanjin Moon, Director Glatzel, Yanni, and to our team, our interns, and to all the participants. We are truly grateful. But before we close, I'd like to plug in something that's really important, dear to our heart. So we never stop. We never stop moving forward, hopefully. And so I would like to invite you to our Giving for Good auction, and you can do three things. You can bid, join, and visit our showroom. So we have an online auction. It will be launched on July 17 to 31, and then it will end on the 31st. We also have a virtual event. It will be on July 29th, and I hope that you will join us at that time. And we will have a showroom in person. You can go there and shop to your heart's content. For the sake of restoring the environment, it will be at the New Yorker Hotel on July 30 and 31. And just to let you know, the founders of Women's Federation, Dr. Hak Jahan Moon, donated so many of her clothings. And this is Hawaii clothing mostly. She donated, and they're beautiful, but with a heart of wanting to save the environment and inspire us women and light workers to continue with our work. And last but not the least, I want to give a big shout out to Miss Karen Ibasco, the Miss Earth 2017. She was so inspired with our work. She donated her replica crown of Miss Earth 2017 for the auction. And I saw it, it was truly beautiful and just grateful. Thank you so much. Okay, so that's really good to close with, right? So much hope for the world. God bless you all. Thank you so much. And this is Merle signing off. Thank you.
A silent killer with a mean spirit to break us apart, to keep us apart. But we are survivors, so we will survive. We gotta dance together, dance together. Oh, he's alive. We gotta rock together, rock together. Oh, he's alive. We gotta sing together, sing together. Oh, he's alive. We gotta laugh together, love each other. Oh, he's alive. I help you, you help me. Oh, he's alive. He helps her, she helps him. Oh, he's alive. We gotta dance together, dance together. Oh, he's alive. We gotta rock together, rock together. Oh, he's alive. We gotta sing together, sing together. Oh, he's alive. We gotta laugh together, love each other. Oh, he's alive.
Thank you, everyone.